Thank you for being here. I have the pleasure of introducing one of the best men in the world. I know I'm biased. He's the first best man, my other one's sitting here. But what I would like to say is, number one, for all our guests, please stay for church at 11 if you want. Father Rick is speaking this morning, and he is an awesome preacher. And second, I would say that this is very, very meaningful to me because one of the things I was worried about with my dad is his spiritual connection and belief in God. So to see this come forward is one of the big things that I now can be at peace with in my life. So with that, I will introduce my friend and my hero, my father, Rand Timmerman.
Woohoo! Welcome to the house of the Good Shepherd. At daybreak, sometimes we get a wonderful view of God's work. This picture is on the Appalachian Trail in 2018, and my name is Rand, and I'm a drunk, sober today. Thank you, God. I belong to an organization that I can't talk about directly. Alcoholics go to a program to get sober, and they choose to remain anonymous. The 12th tradition says, anonymity is the spiritual foundation of all our traditions, reminding us to place principles before personalities. So I cannot say the actual name. So this is a story about my brother and I walking the Appalachian Trail in 2018. My brother Ron his wife Edie had died, and he was going through a lot of grief. A picture of my brother and I on the trail. We're smiling. This is not at the very beginning. It turned out to be a lot harder than I ever imagined. Ron and I grew up in a small town called Adams, New York. It's a very poor town with way more cows than people. Believe it or not, in those days, they were still hand milking cows. And we were the poorest of the poor. My father was a Mustang pilot during World War II. Came home, was afflicted with polio after Ron and I were born, and was paralyzed from the neck down. And he went into a hospital. He was in there for a year, and he spent 8 months in an iron lung. And he was paralyzed from the waist down for the rest of his life. But he's a very hard-working man. And he always did the best he could. But it took a long time for us to get out of poverty. And that had a huge effect on me. Whatever I thought of God, it wasn't necessarily good. I don't know if I blame God for our predicament or not. My brother Ron always had a faith in some kind of a higher power. And that used to tick me off. Because he was always serene. And I didn't understand. I was like the rocket man. I was either going way, way up or way, way down. And it turned out I had this disease called alcoholism. This is what a normal sunrise looks like on the Appalachian Trail. My brother Ron liked to leave early every morning. I did too, actually. The mornings were the best time for the most part. This is a map of the Appalachian Trail. It was on the door at Heidi's house, and I would periodically let them know. We started at Springer Mountain down here, and it's 2,200 miles to Catadin Mountain in Maine. And so they would know where to look for the bodies. I kept them in the book. And you can see up here, it kind of starts to fade out a little bit, and then we end up here, and we end up in the White Mountains in New Hampshire is as far as I got. And I fell every day, but I fell down a rock slide in Massachusetts that really hurt a lot. And we took a 30-day break, and then decided we could go back and do some more. But by the time I did the next 300 miles, I was in agony. I couldn't walk anymore. I ended up with a hip replacement. And Ron actually, Ron actually finish the trail with his stepson, Rick. So my brother and I, after we graduated from high school, my brother Ron went into the Army, and he was stationed he ended up in Vietnam at Montezuma Base, and he was a machine gunner on a helicopter, among other things. I was in college for 3.5 semesters, roughly. I kept changing my major. I was a political science major, I was a math major, I was a German major, and then finally I became a psychology major because I knew I was a nut job and I couldn't figure out what I was going to be when I grew up. And then one day, very hungover, I was listening to the radio. They were talking about the 1st Marine Division in Vietnam, and I went into the Marine Corps. Ron did two tours. I did one extended tour. I was a machine gunner. I was an infantryman. I was a clerk typist. They made me a Mustang lieutenant. I was a captain when I got out of the Marine Corps after 5 years. Ron's faith in Vietnam strengthened. The first battle I was in, men were dying that I thought were bigger. They were definitely bigger than me and better than me. And I had never experienced men who are mortally wounded are either crying for their mothers like a baby, or they're trying to make an unwritten, real quick, unsigned contract with God to get them the hell out of there. And it filled me with rage, which is probably a good thing because I'm here. This is Edie. So when I came back from Vietnam, Ron's riding around in a convertible with this really hot, older lady named Edie, who turns out has 7 kids, and they're riding around in a convertible. She's wearing a mini skirt. She's got the red cowboy boots, and they're doing the line dancing thing, and my brother is on cloud 9. And they were married for 47 years. Edie was a Mormon. My brother became a Mormon in the Bishop Church. He helped many, many people over that time. There was no doubt in his mind about a higher power and what it could do. And I was always kind of jealous because he always seemed kind of serene and happy and boring. I thought drinking was exciting and cool and all of that stuff. One morning on the hike, Ron woke up. When he got up, he was smiling, and I said, "Oh, so damn happy." And he goes, "Yeah, Edie was happy every morning that she got up." And I said, "Really? Even after she had the stroke?" She had a stroke. She was basically in a wheelchair for 6 years. She had a bunch of mini strokes. And Ron took care of her. He wouldn't let anybody else take care of her. And I said, even after the stroke, he said, every morning. And my thought was, where do you find a woman like that? I've been married 4 times, excuse me. Ron and Edie were married 47 years. I've been married 47 years. The problem is it's 4 different women. Which reminds me, I love the House of the Good Shepherd. I love this place. I love the people in it. The people here have love, they have patience, and they have tolerance. I'm just a visitor, right? But anyone is welcome. If I'm welcome here, anybody's welcome here. This is kind of what sunrises look like in Vietnam. There was fantastic sunrises, but normally difficulties occurred at dawn and at dusk. So this is day 1 on the Appalachian Trail. And I put this picture in here because that's my brother, that's his face. And what I see is fear. What have I gotten myself into? So there we are. I'm actually smiling in this picture. That's kind of weird. It's more like a grimace, right? Then Ron, and that's his son-in-law, Rick. Rick was a huge help to us. He was 62, really good shape. He could go all day. He knew a lot about hiking. He knew a lot about equipment. He knew more about equipment than I did, and so on. He was a big help for the first 2 weeks with us, and it was awesome. Active alcoholics frequently take trails that are chaotic, difficult, because in their drunken stupor they do stupid things. Frequently they stumble and fall a lot, foolishly thinking they're not hurting anyone but themselves. That is a big lie. I woke up in the hospital one morning, and there's an old lady sitting by the window reading a book, silhouetted by the sunlight. And I'm trying to figure out what did I do now? And I know I'm not hurt, I don't have any injuries or wounds, and after a while, another lady comes in with a book, and they talk for a minute, and then the first one leaves, and the other one sits down there. Now 4 or 5 hours have gone by, and I'm trying to figure out what. But I go, why are you here? She goes, oh, honey, I'm here to keep you company. Well, she hasn't said a word. Neither one of them had said a word to me. And I realized I'm on suicide watch. Wow. And I'm thinking, this will never happen again. That was a mistake. It did happen again. Alcohol is a disease. It is recognized by the American Medical Association. It's a disease because alcoholics drink alcohol differently. We actually know now, because of science, that we metabolize alcohol differently. Our bodies create acetone. A normal drinker gets some acetone. They get that nauseous feeling. They get that feeling of uncomfortable. And they stop. They don't like that feeling. We get thirstier. That acetone builds up, and the more it builds up, the thirstier we get. And then we have the obsession of the mind. And I would be thinking about drinking all the time because it was pleasurable. But then I take that first drink, and every cell in my body starts screaming for more. And I can't stop. For a long time, I could stop. I had the delusion of control. And I actually lived a pretty good life until I crossed the line in my early 60s. I could not get back to the normal side. I could not get back. So that's a big lie. We are hurting people. And we're in a fog a lot. First few weeks, it was cold, it was rainy, it was snowy, it was foggy. You're just trudging. Trudge means to walk with deliberation. So, on that hospital stay, Dan showed up. See, I was hurting other people. I didn't know that. He came to try to help me. He flew up. I was glad he was there, but I wasn't ready. And, of course, that's Heidi and Liam and Sophie, and then me and Ron took the picture. Next one. I love this picture. Look at this little guy. That was me in the hospital bed, I tell you. Sometimes God has a plan that we have a hard time seeing for a very long time. God was obviously with me for a very long time, and I just was blind to it. I thought I was doing all this stuff myself. If you don't believe in a higher power, then you must think you're God. And I didn't realize that. That's what I actually thought. I was running the universe. Today, I'm not that guy anymore. The first 3 steps in the program, that anonymous program that I can't talk about a lot, and there's a good reason for it, because if I relapse and I'm standing in front of you like some kind of dry or a sober drunk, and then I go back out, what am I saying about that program? I'm saying that it doesn't work. So I can't do that. But I became the man that God wanted me to be. And I had my sponsor we get sponsors in AA. Those are guys that help us figure out how to do this thing. And my sponsor would say, don't you be praying for outcomes. God's got way better outcomes than you'll ever come up with. I had no idea. Your problem, Rand, is that you are not humble enough. Why is it I can't do God's will and not drink alcohol? I had come back for the 11th time. I was right near the end of my dire saga. And one of the old timers got sick of me coming back every 3.5 months and raising my hand. And I'm back. I'll get it this time. But I'm going to do it my way. I'm not going to do it your way. And he'd stop me in front of the doorway. Everybody's still there. It really took me off. And he's poking me. He's a great big guy. He's probably 250 pounds of pure muscle, right? And he's poking me in the stomach. Rand, you know what your problem is? Really irritated me. What's my problem? You're not humble enough. What the? You don't know who I am. I'm a combat vet. I'm a professional. I'm a this. I'm a that. In my head, right? And I pushed my way by him. He was right. I thought being humble meant holding the door for old ladies, being nice to people, which I generally was. I like to think of myself, I'm a nice guy. I just got a little drinking problem. No, I got a really bad drinking problem. And when I do, I am not a nice person. I have some very bad character defects. Go that way. Now, so one of my brother's spiritual experiences on the trail, he was really suffering. Poor guy, I had no idea what he was going through in a way. We're tough guys, right? When I was writing the book, I wrote a book about this, by the way, and it's in the library here. It's called Spiritual Passage. And I had no idea. I'm reading my brother's journal so I can do it. It's a daily story, right? He was suffering physically. I mean, he was having weight pains. I was in wicked pain all the time. I had a hard time sleeping at night. In my tent, I had to have 2 pillows, one to put between my knees. And I had no idea. And I had no idea emotionally how my brother was having a really hard time. So on Father's Day in 2018, we always met halfway. He came from the north and I came from the south. There's roads crossing the Appalachian Trail. Most of it, every 10, 15 miles. So we would hike, we would stay where we ended up on the trail. I slept in a tent every night. My brother slept in his car most of the time. And then he would drive to the next road. So he's always going south, I'm always going north. So I don't see him except in the middle of the day. And this particular day, he was really having a hard time with his grief over Edie's death. And it was Father's Day, so that whole thing, right, was going on in his head. And he was not happy. And so we met, and he goes, and there was another person there too. And we're chit-chatting, and Ron goes, man, it's dark in here. Somebody needs to turn a light on. He's just joking around, right? We left, and my brother was walking, and he saw that. He took a picture of it, and it looked like somebody was in that halo. And he got scared, and he turned to run away, and then he realized, and he turned back, and he felt a spiritual presence. And he knew God was speaking to him that Edie was okay. She was in a better place. It was going to be fine. Our Father's in a better place. It's going to be fine. And Ron felt some peace and serenity they had not felt in years. And he walked through the halo. Now, in the real world, that's probably just sunlight. But that is a miracle. Everything is dark except that one little spot where somehow some rays came from the sun right when my brother needed it. Sometimes we have to learn to trust God even when we're not sure where we've been, where we are, or where we're going. So I ended up on Billy Cook's, I can say his name because he died 2 years ago. And he became my sponsor. I ended up on his doorstep on my last drunk. I did not know him. I was going to go to the liquor store and get a gallon of vodka. It was like 8 or 9 days. I'm going to finish the job. When I looked in the mirror, all I saw was loser, hollow, death. You are a complete waste of humanity. And I just wanted it to end. I was at what we call my bottom. And I ended up on Billy's. I didn't make it to the liquor store. Billy took me to the emergency room and spent the whole day talking to me about his journey into this anonymous program 30 years before. And he wasn't going to do the God thing either. But he didn't want to drink anymore. And the old guys put their arms around him and said, hey, kid, you stick with us. And you won't have to drink again. And we'll help you. And he became the most spiritual man I had ever met, for sure. So he picked me up. I was in detox. He came to detox every day after I got out of the emergency room after a whole day. And then he picked me up and took me to an anonymous meeting. And we're sitting there and I'm thinking, what are you going to do, Rand? What are you going to do different? Oh, I'll read the big book, which is our Bible, right? Tells us how to do this thing. Again, I've already read it 5 times. I'll go to 4 meetings a day instead of 3 until I get back on my feet. And Billy turns to me and he goes, man, you know what? If I could have changed myself, I never would have walked through that door 30 years ago. I've been wanting to change. I don't want to drink anymore. I just don't know how to do it. And I can't change myself. I need help from a higher power. And Billy said, you need to start praying to that God that you don't believe in. And I go, Billy, I'm going to do whatever you tell me, but I'm telling you, that's step 11. We're supposed to do the other 10 first. And he looks at me and goes, Ray, in your case, we're going to make an exception. Because if you don't start praying to that God you don't believe in, you will get drunk again. And I knew in here that he was telling me the truth. And I didn't want to do that. I said, Billy, I don't know how to pray. He taught me how to pray. I've been doing it every morning since, before daylight, on my knees. And I have not had enough. And for a long time I thought, this isn't working. I'm praying to this God, I'm sending out all those radio waves or whatever the heck they are, and nothing's coming back. But I was wrong. We do change. We start to change. Other people see it before we even do. But he told me, Rand, there's times going to come when you're going to want to drink again. I don't want to drink again, but you're going to have to drink again. Because that's what alcoholics do, right? And he said, don't call me. And I thought, man, that's kind of harsh. Don't call you. But he knew I wasn't going to call him. If I get to that point where I think I have to drink again, I'm going to drink. He said, you get on your knees and you pray to that God you don't believe in, or you will get drunk again. And that day came, and I was doing the whirling dervish, and I'm going to go, and I know what I'm going to do. And I got on the floor, and I begged, don't let me do this again. And when I got up, it was gone. It was the first time in my adult life when I had that feeling that I did not drink. And 3.5 months later, it happened again. I go, holy cow, this might actually work. I tried to pass that message along to a person that I love dearly, who is in the worst place she could possibly be right now. And I went to see her. Her husband was gone, the kids were gone, the job was gone, she still had the house. Barely. And she was drunk when I got there. I poured coffee down her throat and went on a 5-mile hike in 100-degree temperature. She kind of sobered up a little bit. And we started planting flowers. And she knew my story. I had told her. And she could see that I had changed. And we're planting the flowers, and I go, because she's a God denier, just like me. And I go, can you make a flower? And she goes, oh yeah, sure. I'll draw it for you, Dad, and I can put all the parts. She's really smart. I said, no. Can you make a flower? I can't make a flower. Where did that come from? That's all I got. Sometimes we are but a broken shell of ourselves and don't even know how empty, hollow, shallow, and ridiculous we have become. Oh, I knew. May God help us become aware and mindful of our true self. So we have these steps. The first 3 are, basically, the short version is, I can't get sober on my own. God can help me get sober. 2, 3, step 3, I think I'll let him. And we become a different person. I'm not that same guy anymore. Sometimes God helps us to take a hard look at ourselves, admit total defeat, and then humbly accept the help we need to climb the hard road to a better way of living. You know, and it's funny, recently I was at a meeting like every day at noon because there's a lot of people coming from rehabs. Somebody said, we need some help here. So I've been going there. This guy was coming in every day. And all he was talking about was how bad his drinking was. And how horrible it was, and how he had to do it, and this and that, and this and that, and this and that. And after about the 5th day, he goes, I know I should do the steps, but it just seems so darn hard. And when it was my turn, I spoke up and I said, doing the steps is easy. living a drunken life is hard. That's the hard part. It's really easy. And more flowers. Lots of beautiful flowers on the Appalachian Trail. I just love them. Without a higher power in our life, it often feels like life becomes more than we can handle. That is actually the trail. You're going to go, no way. That's the trail. If you look up here, there's a hiker. But it doesn't have to be hard. So here's Ron, right? Does he look happy? Yes. This is like the fourth day in a row, 35 to 45 degrees rain all day long. And I meet Ron in the middle, like late morning, like we always do, because we're doing about we averaged almost 12 miles a day. And there he is. Smiling. There's me. Oh, man. So hard. Some of us are lost and don't know where we're going or even the way to get there. God can help us with that. Others have relied on God for many years to know where they're going and love any map that shows them the way. That's my brother. Happy, serene, spiritual. And he loves maps. I have 6,000 pictures. Ron didn't take hardly any pictures. His goal every day was to get from point A to point B as fast as he could go, which was faster than me, so we didn't walk together anyway, or we couldn't have. After a while, first couple of weeks, I'm like looking at the terrain, what to expect, and all that kind of stuff. And I said, you know what, I'm going to hike it like it's 1970. No satellites, no GPS. My brother had a GPS thing, got checked to where he was all the time. I'm going to just hike it as if it's 1970, and whatever unfolds, unfolds. And for me, it was a lot more fun that way. I took a lot more pictures. I went a little bit slower. But sometimes we just have to follow God's light to see where it takes us. Because I had no clue. God's always with us. If we let God work in our hearts, in our minds, and our soul, we can be reborn. The old can be replaced by the new. Even when you're 68 years old. Doesn't matter how old we are. Sometimes God gives us a chance to follow a new path that is not that arduous, and for our own benefit, that goes to a new and better place. I had no idea. But some of the trail is really nice. And it wanders all over the place. If it's 2,200 miles from Springer Mountain to Catadin Mountain, it's got to be a lot further than that. Because you do not walk in a straight line. At all. But it's beautiful. We are sick as our secrets, but we need to tell someone we trust to assure our confidentiality in order to clean our side of the street and later to make amends. So step 4 is we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Step 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. These are the 2 probably most important steps. I didn't want to do them. I did not want to think about what I had done in Vietnam and other places. I didn't want to tell somebody. That was my mantra. I will never do that. Billy said, Rand, if you don't do those steps, you will get drunk again. God can only help you so much. You have to help yourself. I did those 2 steps. And afterwards, the next 6 and 7 are, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. And 7 is that we humbly ask God to remove our shortcomings. And I can tell you in that process, we look at the world in a whole new way. And by then, for most of us, the idea of drinking again is ridiculous. I was beginning to experience days where I didn't even think about it, let alone, and had no desire. But there's always manure. That is bear scat. There are a lot of bears on the Appalachian Trail, and especially in the Shenandoah Park and the Blue Ridge Park. And it got to be where we were seeing them every day. And that's kind of, can wear on you after a while. Those 2 little guys, they were fun. couple days before that, Ron was seeing bear before me, and then the first bear I saw was quite a ways away on the trail. They liked the trail. We ran into a ranger, and we were talking about bears, and the ranger said, there's 600 bears we were in Shenandoah Park. I go, there's only 300 square miles here. That's 2 bears for every square mile. He said, yeah, I know. And I said, 100 miles of that, the bears aren't even going to go on. You know, it's straight up and down. And so they like the trails. And he said, yeah, it's a serious problem. The next bear I saw, I came around the corner, and this bear was from the air to that whiteboard. And he stopped like this with his paw in the air. He's froze, I'm froze. And my first thought was, this is the most magnificent creature God has ever made. I had never been that close in the wild to an animal that beautiful. His head was the size of a watermelon. He's staring at me. He is huge, and his fur is pure black and glistening. I'm like, oh my God. And I'm trying to get my phone, and as soon as I move, he twists around, and he's flying down the trail. I didn't even get a picture of his butt. I mean, thank God, right? And then when he got down far enough, he went off the trail and down the mountain. And when he did, the first one, it just went into the floor. I never heard a sound. He went down that mountain. He was knocking over trees. Boulders are rolling down. I'm not kidding you. The racket is unbelievable. And another hiker walks up behind me and goes, what the heck is that? I said, that's a bear. Yeah, it is. That's a big bear. These two guys, I'm coming down the trail, and I see them, and they're playing. They see me, and they run over this little knoll. It's all grass. And then they go up this tree. I got about 20 pictures of that. So I get down there. I'm looking at them. And I'm thinking, where's Mama? Well, Mama pops up about where Heidi is, right? I go, oh my gosh. I tried to take a picture of her when she's looking at me. But she looked at me. She looked down the trail. She turned around, looked up the tree. Everything's good here. We're good. Holy cow. So I just walked down by. But, this guy did not go anywhere. And he's staring at me, and I'm staring at him. And that's kind of a fuzzy picture. I think I was shaking a little bit. I had that momentary awareness that, man, you are no longer at the top of the food chain. At this moment, in this place, right here, right now, he is. And in the old days, I used to tell hikers, if a bear will charge, and they will do a fake charge. You never know for sure. I've been in this situation. Anyway, they used to tell you to lay down on the ground and curl up in the fetal position. They don't tell people to do that anymore. That was very, very, very bad advice. What you need to do, if a bear is charging you, need to make yourself as big as possible, jump up and down, yell and scream, and if you have a pistol like I always did, you may want to get it out, right? I had one bear that played with me, stalked me for like an hour one day. And I don't want to shoot a bear. I absolutely do not want to do that. And finally, I don't know, he fake charged me, I fake charged him. Bears are a serious matter. I just walked away from this guy. Every picture I took that day is kind of blurry, I'm pretty sure. It's for quite a while. Do we accept the bridges that God gives us in order that we may be able to cross the obstacles that are thrown in our path? If you're sober and you have a program and you've turned your will and your life over to God, it gets much easier. Ron had a really bad time one day. I was doing my prayer. I woke up early and did my prayer and meditation in my tent, and made myself coffee in my little stove, and so I had my little quiet time for about an hour before daylight. And this one morning, Ron is wailing and crying, and I get out of the tent, and he's, I had the worst nightmares last night. I miss eating. He just was in a very bad place. So I'm going to quit. We're not doing this anymore. Blah, 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 blah. And part of me is going, oh, okay, fine. But I knew in my heart that if he did that and then went home, it would be devastating for him. I know my brother. I didn't think that was God's plan for him. Not that way. Anyway, I convinced him, look, let's just do the hike today. And if you decide you don't want to do it anymore, good. So that's what we ended up doing. I meet him at late morning, or, we both do about 6 miles, generally, we would meet. And he's okay, and he's not saying anything. We didn't stop. My bad experience was in the Smokies. We were in the Smokies, 70 miles across. We had to backpack because there's no roads for parts of that. So we basically broke it into 2 35-mile stretches. And anyway, Ron would stay in the shelters. I didn't like to do that. And I tried to make it to what it's called a dip, because usually there's a place where you can pitch a tent. I didn't make it. And a storm came up, and I pitched my tent right on the trail, because the trail was only like, believe it or not, from here to there, and on both sides it went down thousands, hundreds, if not thousands of people. I mean, I'm in the worst place you could possibly imagine. And I pitched my tent, and I got in it, and it started storming. And the winds came, and it sounded like, I took this picture the next morning. It sounded like freight trains were coming up the valley and then come straight up the mountain. Sometimes they would go to the right to me and the left to me, and then sometimes they would come right at me. And I felt like I was in a body bag, and I was just going to go flying off that mountain, and my life was going to be done. And I'm praying to the God I believe in. If this is what you want to have happen to me, okay, I'll accept that. But I really would appreciate it if we had a little different outcome. And it was the worst night of my life. Well, no, not the worst, but it was up there. And when the daybreak came, I realized, wow. Ron asked me later when I was telling him about it, he said, were you hanging on the tent poles? Because these little tents are very small. They just have 2. I said, no. I was laying flat, pressing down with my hands and feet on the stakes as hard as I could to keep from being blown off the top of that mountain. Sometimes crossing the rough spots is what makes us strong, and God knows that. We are never alone. God is always with us, whether we want to be aware of that or not. God was with me then. I have learned that when things are hard, when I'm in some kind of stress, emotional or whatever, that's when I have spiritual experiences. That's when I grow spiritually. When everything is sunshiny and cloudy and all that kind of stuff, I'm just coasting, right? God gives us these challenges so that we can grow. That's what I believe. Snakes. There's a lot of poisonous snakes on the trail. A lot of the young hikers are walking around. Half of them are high. When you went to a campsite, all you can smell is pot. They got these earbuds in because nobody can live without their electronics anymore, right? So every time I came across a dangerous snake, I would try to get rid of it. So I ended up playing with them, which is not a good idea. So this is a cottonmouth. This was the first one that I ran into. And he turned on me. And what I didn't realize, I learned, if he wanted to bite me, he could bite me. He can bite me just like that. I can't, but I'm an idiot. And you can see it. The reason he's called a cottonmouth, looks like cotton in his mouth. That's a rattler that my brother took a picture of. It's coiled. Sometimes they go, other times they go, that's another reason why sometimes it can be hard to hear the rattle. This guy, pretty big snake as you can tell, it's going across the trail, right? When I got there, he was coiled up, he was rattling like a fool, and I can't get him off the trail. He's very aggressive. So we're kind of playing with each other in a very dangerous game. And I looked down, there was a chipmunk right next to my foot with 2 bloody holes on it in his quiver. So this is his dinner. He's not leaving. And I can't get by him, right? And I'm a complete idiot. So, there's other ways to do this, right? But not me, no, We're eyeballing each other. I reached down and I threw it as far as I could back into the woods, and he went for it. I managed to get a picture. The funny thing about rattlesnakes is, see his head? It's not clear, right? Every picture I have of a rattlesnake, the head is fuzzy like that because they must be quivered. That's all I can figure out. Jeff Boyd. Jeff was one of my friends in AA that I worked with quite a bit. And he passed while I was on the trail. And I really love this guy. He was what we call a big book guy. He knew the big book inside and out. He had more sobriety than I did, but he asked me to be his sponsor because his sponsor went back out and died drunk. And I said, Jeff, you got way more time. He had twice as much time as I did. I had like 3 years at that time, 2 years. He goes, yeah, man, but I don't struggle. You don't struggle, I do. And he was right. Best thing I ever did. He called me every day, he texted me every day. Anyway, he had a crisis in his life, and he wouldn't give it up to God. Last time I talked to him, he had to go to basically a hearing. And the outcome of that was going to be devastating to him, most likely. And I was talking to him about turning it over to God, and he said, yeah, man, I know what you're going to tell me. Third step prayer, third sentence. God, take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those we may seek to help with thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. Now, Rand, I can't do it. I said, Jeff, you can do it. Call me after the hearing. He didn't call me. His wife called me. The ambulance had just left. He died of a massive heart attack on his 50th birthday because he didn't know how to turn that problem over to God. This is the Hudson River there with the bridge, and we actually walked across that bridge. So this is a few days after Jeff's death. Now I'm on another mountain in New York, past the Hudson River, and I'm standing there early in the morning, and I'm looking out, and I can't see anything man-made. Nothing. No contrails, no, and I'm in New York, right? And I'm looking, and you can't see in this picture, I can just barely see the top of a skyscraper. 50 miles I can see New York City. And beyond that, there is no sign of human life whatsoever. And I thought, my God, you make things so wonderful for us. And I realized, my God wasn't big enough. I need to make my God bigger. So I make my God so big that it's real easy to go, you know what, big guy, I can't handle this. You take it. That's what I did with my grief over Jeff. I still miss him a lot, but that heavy weight was gone. That's all I got. Sometimes maybe it is much better if we sit down, shut up, and listen to the messages God's trying to send us. Most often through and other people. I have some friends here today from that anonymous program we can't talk about that help me a ton. We meet every day and we share our experience, strength, and hope with each other so that we don't drink. Weirdness, anyway. So you climb up mountains, you're miles and miles and miles from anything, and then you see this. And it says, dream. And there's a little table and a chair, and oh my God, that's so cool. So, my brother one day said, we're always tired at night. Sometimes we didn't talk very much, but anyway, one night he's talking. He goes, there's a lot of weird people out here. I go, no, bro. I said, yeah, there are a lot of them. Everybody out here is weird. He goes, we're not weird. We're normal. I said, no, bro, we're weird. Normal people don't do this. And so I had one night I was talking about arguing. I go, well, there's a lot of arguing going on in this trail. And he goes, what are you talking about? You're weird, bro. I don't know what you're talking about. I said, yeah, there's a lot of I don't hear any arguing, right? There's a lot of arguing going on out here. You're walking along and your brain goes, no, don't go there, go there. And the right foot goes, no, left foot, go over here. I fell down every day. I broke 4 hiking poles. That's what kind of arguing I was talking about. And he just looks at me and goes, you're weird, bro. I am weird. All right. Sometimes all we can do is keep climbing and hope for the best. If you don't like where you are, keep going and it will change. I tell my guys that. If you don't like where you are, move your feet. If your brain is in a bad spot, move your feet. Most of the time that means call somebody or go to a meeting. God makes flowers, not me. I love the flowers. When things get turbulent, God does not want us to be disturbed, but rather to seek the calm spaces. The deer are tame. They just walk right up to you. All right, I'm going to talk a little bit about Billy's demise because I'm running out of time. So at the end, Billy got really sick while I was on the trail. He spent 4 months in the ICU, actually before I went on the trail, and I was with him every day for a while. And then he ended up having his leg cut off. And we had a period there. I was home on one of our breaks that we took, and I went to see him, and I could see that he was struggling with his faith, with his belief in God. And like I said, he was the most spiritual man I ever met. And I could tell that he was feeling, I have been sober for 33 years at this point. I have helped hundreds of men. He never said this, and look what God is doing to me. And I found myself holding his hands and talking to him the way he talked to me in the very beginning about a spiritual power and that God has plans for us and we will never be able to understand him and all that kind of stuff. And I came up with God gave us free will and a roulette wheel of genetic material that whirls around on its own space, creating circumstances that God does not have the power to alter. It's all part of his master plan, which we are never going to be able to understand completely. But we have to accept it and find serenity and peace in God's love for us. And we talked about that, and I held his hand. And anyway, it was precious for me because I was able to give back to him what he had given me, a belief in a higher power. And he ended up going home, and he had 2 years. And we had meetings, and then he died suddenly, which was a blessing. That's my point on that one. Sometimes faith is all we have to work with. More flowers. I love the raptors. If we do this deal and we have a spiritual connection with a higher power, we are free. And the day ends on a bright note. That's all I got. Thanks. Well, we got a few minutes. I guess we have some minutes right here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any questions? I'll try to.
I think you might have said this, but I didn't quite catch it. How long were you sober when you decided to do this?
Okay, I was 3 years sober.
3 years.
Yeah. Actually, I was 4. I'm coming up on 3-4 days now. On May 6th, I will have 8 years. And it's funny because, so I do the program, right? And at the end of that first year, a young guy comes up to me after a meeting and says, will you be my sponsor? I'm like, oh my God. In my brain, I'm like, whoa, I didn't expect that. And I'm thinking, you're not ready, right? But I used the trick that Billy always used because Billy, if somebody came up, and men, he helped many, many men. They would come up to him and say, will you be my sponsor? And Billy would go, I'll tell you what, mister, you come back here tomorrow morning and we'll talk about it then, right? Well, 90% of the time, all they had was a momentary pang of willingness. And then, well, not that bad, or whatever, right? So I it's a good way to filter. So I told that young man that. Because I needed time to go talk to Billy, right? I didn't expect this. So I go to Billy and I tell him, and Billy goes, yeah, sure. Billy, I was sure you were going to tell me you're not ready. I'm not ready. He said, yeah, you're ready. You ready? You got lots of bad experience. Lots of bad experience. Now you've got a year of good experience. It was the best thing I ever did. I call my guys, they're God's guys, but I like to think of them as guys in a way. And I always try to make the point regularly, hey, you're helping me more than I'm helping you. The first two went out and got drunk and died. And I was like, not in a good spot. I almost wanted to drink. That's weird. But I didn't. Anyway, great question. Thank you. Yes, sir.
When you were drinking, what did your family do that was helpful or unhelpful?
Wow. What do we do? See, I have a situation. If they're not ready, there's not a darn thing you can do. In all my experience, I only know one person where the family did an intervention and they went to a rehab and they stayed sober. That is very, very, very uncommon. It's Billy would say, "Don't chase. Whatever you do, don't chase." I chased my first guy. I chased him. I love this man. We had been to hundreds of meetings. He didn't have a vehicle. He lived in a homeless shelter. I took him to all over the place. He was at my house. He was at my camp. He was my friend. I took him to weddings. I took him to his kids' graduations. Sat there and watched this man live a sober life. And he got a wad of money, which he shouldn't have got. And within 2 weeks, he was drunk. And Billy said, "Don't chase him." I went to his house. I said, "Billy doesn't understand. We're friends. He'll be glad to see me." When I got there, he answered the door. Finally, he's in his whitey tighties, which are not very white, with a bottle of vodka in one hand and a glass in another, and I see myself. And he starts screaming at me. I wasn't there 30 seconds, and I left. And after that, if I called him or I texted him, he wouldn't answer the call, and if he texted me, he would say, "Rand, I'm going to get sober and I'll go to a meeting with you, but not today, and whatever you do, don't come here." And I learned a very valuable lesson, and that lesson is, if I want your sobriety more than you do, that's on me. The best thing we can do is pray. Be there. I go see people that are struggling, spend as much time with them as I can without having it adversely affect me, and I leave. They know I'm there. They know I'm available. I do not talk to them about my program, and I do not talk to them about their drinking. I'm just there. That's all I got on that. Thanks. Okay, I guess it's a wrap. Thank you. I really appreciate this.
I got one more.
I got something.
I do want to say again, this is the most wonderful church. There is service at 11 o'clock. Anybody is welcome. If they let me hang around here, they'll let anybody hang around here.
Dan wanted to ask you something.
No, I have a comment. So, everybody that knows Heidi knows that she is the most organized planner in the world. And most people, when they're going to do 2,000 miles on the Appalachian Trail, they'll spend 6 months a year to plan it. The really crazy people will spend about a month. This guy spent 2 days.
I wasn't alone.
Let me one last thing, because you've told us this before, but just remind me how you guys did it. You kind of did a hopscotch kind of thing. Flip-flop. Can you explain that just real quick?
Sure. So we started out in Springer Mountain, and you can see it was really bad weather. In March is probably too early. So my brother was excited to get going. And so when we got to the Smokies, I had a really bad infection in my feet. I didn't know it, but I was almost septic. And so I had to leave I ended up leaving for a week. And antibiotics and all that stuff. So, and hikers got snowed in the Smoky Mountains. And they don't come and rescue you. If you get in trouble on Smoky, you're in your own. They will not. Well, anyway. So, we jumped up to Damascus, and then we did up into Virginia, and then when the weather got better, we went back to Damascus, and then we did all the way back down to the Smokies, and then we did the Smokies in 2 parts, and ended back up at Fontana Dam, where we originally got to in the first 2 weeks plus.
Dad, I think he's asking about every day though, you flip flop. Most people hike together, you do not hike
You guys,
together.
yeah, you guys like started, when he dropped you off or somebody dropped you, then he would drive up.
Well, we had 2 vehicles.
You had 2 vehicles.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's the only way we could do
I
it.
got you.
I would tell you that when we walked with a pack, but it was a day pack. I had
Right,
you know,
that's
first
right.
aid, food, water. I carried a lot of water because a lot of hikers don't carry enough water. We run into people who dehydrate all the time. And I actually gave away water purifiers and stuff like that. But anyway, yeah, so Ron always walked pretty much north to where my truck was. And that's usually where we stayed. So I would just get up and go.
Okay.
He would drive up, and then he would race to my truck because he had to get there and get back around to where his vehicle was before I got done. That's one time we meet, and I practically ran, right? I'm going to beat it today. So, because every day when we met, he'd check his gut check thing, and he'd say, oh, I've done 6 miles, and you've done 5 1/4, you know, like that. I didn't realize we were racing, right? So this one day, I bust my butt, really. And when he met me, he's like, wow, I didn't expect to see you yet. And we're sitting there, and he's checking the gut check. I said, well, what's it look like? He says, you've done 6 miles, and I've done 5 1/4. I never beat him again. Well, racing. But anyway.
That's awesome. Well, thank you. And so I remember when I gave my first Good Shepherd in the World talk, I was waiting for my honey. I got it. And I was like, what happened, you know? And then I found out that, well, Charles told me, we don't give honey to family, right? So, meaning, in other words, if you're here.
So I'm not family?
Well, that's good. So here's the problem. You are family. But I'm still going to give you the honey.